ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So here Lord Kapila is explaining about the result of practicing pure devotional service. In the previous verses, Lord Kapila had described that all the devotional service is only one. It is not many, but depending on the modes by which we are influenced, we can practice devotional service differently. So, if somebody is in the mode of goodness, he will practice in certain way. Somebody is in the mode of passion, he practices in a certain way. Somebody is in ignorance. All that we saw. And then Lord Kapila explained about pure devotional service, uninterrupted, unmotivated, only for satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that how the pure devotees of the Lord, they don't aspire for even liberation from this material world. What to talk about some material profit, material gains. They don't even aim for liberation, which is very much sought after by jnanis, yogis, and other so-called transcendentalists. So here, in this verse, it is explained very nicely that this ekatva, which is sought after by jnanis or the yogis, they want to become one with the Lord, is very easily attained by the devotees by practicing pure devotional service. But their ekatva is different from the ekatva of these impersonalists. For impersonalists, their ekatva is they want to completely give up their individual identity and merge in the identity of the Supreme Lord. Merge in Brahman. That is their whole understanding. But here, the Lord is also saying, Mad bhavya upapadhyate. By practicing pure devotional service, they will attain qualitative oneness with me. They will attain the same qualities as I have. They attain the same nature, bhava, as mine. So, this is the understanding about pure devotional service. What does it mean to attain the same qualities as the Supreme Lord? Now, it is very important to understand Supreme Lord, He is Nirguna. He has no material gunas, no tinge of materialism. That is why he is called Nirguna. Passion, ignorance, goodness, all these things do not affect the Supreme Lord. So that is why he is called Nirguna. So anyone who practices pure devotional service, he also becomes Nirguna. Means immediately he overcomes the three modes of material nature and he becomes qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. That means only transcendental qualities, no material things. That is the meaning of pure devotional service. So that kind of pure devotional service, that is not possible by practicing some mixed devotional service or any other path, whether it is dhyana, jnana, philosophical speculation. It is not possible. One may rise to the platform of impersonal Brahman, understanding his qualitative oneness with the Supreme Lord, but he does not attain that platform. Simply understanding Aham Brahmasmi, I am also Brahman, is not enough. Rather, this misunderstanding that I am that Supreme Brahman is the cause of his fall down, even though he has risen up above the three modes of material nature. So, after one has come out of the three modes of material nature, if one does not take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord by performing devotional service, Bhagavatam says he will still fall down. So that means actually temporarily they come out of influence of three modes. It is not permanent. That is a stage from where Prabhupada explains this very nicely. Suppose you follow the instructions of a physician and you take medicines, you follow the do's and don'ts, you come out of your feverish condition or diseased condition. But after that, if you do not follow hygienic principles as given by the doctor, how to live in a healthy way, then there is good chance once again you will fall sick. So their position is like this, that following certain principle, they come out of the diseased condition, that means the influence of three modes of material nature. But because they do not practice after that pure devotional service, which is called healthy activities of the living entity, once again they fall back to these activities. And that is how we find, even though they call themselves that we have become one with Brahman, and first they give up activities, later on they take once again to some pious activities, opening hospitals, feeding people, such kind of activities. So it is very clear, completely one can come out of the three modes of influence of three modes of material nature only by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. That is exactly what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Anyone remembers that shloka? Mam chayo avyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samaitetan brahma-bhuyaya kalpate. Immediately by practicing devotional service, one crosses over the influence of three modes and is situated on Brahman platform. Now here you find Prabhupada is very nicely analyzing this whole verse, and very beautifully he is presenting some very important arguments. Like right in the beginning, Prabhupada is explaining about the position of the Supreme Lord. Why Prabhupada is explaining here, it is actually talked about bhakti, but Prabhupada begins by talking about the Supreme Lord. Shankaracharya is saying the Supreme Lord is never affected by three modes of material nature. He is always about the three modes. Because when Krishna is saying he attains to my nature, first of all we have to understand what is that nature of the Supreme Lord. If Supreme Lord is also contaminated by three modes of material nature, then what is so big thing about attaining his nature? Isn't it? So this is the mistake of these impersonalists. They take that even the Supreme Lord, he is also affected by three modes of material nature when he descends in this material world. They think like this. So according to them, Brahman means no quality at all, no form at all. Nirguna and Arupa, no form. Moment you talk about qualities, moment you talk about form, they say that means it is three modes of material nature. This is their whole understanding. So that is why they are thinking when that Supreme Brahman takes a form of Narayana, even that form may be very goodness, but even that has tinge of materialism. This is their whole understanding. Because form means matter, form means material, form means these three guna. So Prabhupada is saying that their leader themselves, Shankaracharya, he never said, when commenting on Bhagavad Gita, right in the beginning he is writing, Shankaracharya is saying, Narayana para avyakta. That Narayana, the Supreme Lord, he is transcendental even to Vyakta and Avyakta. What is manifest and some things are not manifest. But Narayana is beyond them. Vedic literatures also point this out. When there was no creation, Eko Narayana Asit, na Brahma, na Rudra. There was neither Brahma, there was no Rudra at that time. There was no material creation. Supreme Lord existed. So three modes of material nature did not even exist. So that means the Supreme Lord is beyond the three modes of material nature. So this is the first very important thing person has to understand. So these two very important points Prabhupada points out. One, that Sripad Shankaracharya himself says that Lord Narayana is beyond matter. Vedic literature say there was no Brahma, there was no Indra, there was no Shiva. Eko Narayana Asit. Only Lord Narayana existed before even the material creation. So, next Prabhupada very nicely analyzes about how a devotee, when he practices devotional service, he comes to the same platform of Nirguna, and that is why the Supreme Lord is called Nirguna. The material qualities of goodness, passion and ignorance cannot affect the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is called Nirguna, free from all tinges of material qualities. Here, the same fact is confirmed by Lord Kapila. One who is situated in pure devotional service is transcendently situated, as is the Lord. So that is why it is very important to understand Vedic literatures, Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken directly by the Supreme Lord. It has nothing to do with matter. It is all transcendental. The moment we think that even the Supreme Lord, when He comes and when He speaks, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or whatever, Vedic literatures are also said that the Supreme Lord gave first this Vedic knowledge in the heart of Brahma. So then all that loses significance immediately. How one can become transcendental by material? If Vedas, which have emanated from the Supreme Lord, because it is not said in the Vedic literature, Vedas emanated from impersonal Brahman, that is never said. And we ourselves are seeing when that Supreme Brahman descended in the form of Krishna, they are thinking like this: Supreme Brahman took the form of Krishna and he is affected by three modes. Then what is the value of Bhagavad Gita? Then why are you reading and why are you commenting at all on Bhagavad Gita? There is no value. So they fail to understand this. So they cannot understand that there can be transcendental qualities, there can be transcendental form. They fail to understand this point. So that is why Prabhupada is explaining the Supreme Lord, He has transcendental qualities, and that is why he is called Nirguna. No material qualities. Guna means material qualities. Nirguna means no material qualities. One who is situated in pure devotional service is transcendental situated, as is the Lord. Just as the Lord is unaffected by influence of material mode, so too are His pure devotees. One who is not affected by the three modes of material nature is called a liberated soul or Brahma-Bhuta soul. Brahma-Bhuta Prasannatma is the stage of liberation. Aham Brahmasmi, I am not this body. This is applicable only to the person who constantly engages in devotional service of the Lord and is thus in the transcendental stage. He is above the influence of three modes of material nature. So, the example is given. Prabhupada gives this very beautiful example. Suppose a man can travel maximum at of, let us say, 30 km per hour, 40 km per hour. Even if you want to run, it will not be more than that. But thousands of such men, if they sit in an aeroplane which is running at the speed of 1000 kilometers or 1000 miles per hour, then all these thousands of people, they are also traveling with the same speed. So similarly, even though we are minute in nature, the moment we become connected to the Supreme Lord, we also acquire those qualities. It is just like, actually, it is the aeroplane which is moving with 1000 miles per hour, but because you are sitting in that, you are also moving along with the aeroplane. Another example Prabhupada gives is iron rod. Now, iron rod is not fire. Iron rod is not electricity. But the moment you touch it to electrical current, this becomes electrified. This also acquires the quality of fire. It will act like fire. So similarly, this is the meaning of attaining qualitative oneness with the Supreme Lord. So, how to become Nirguna is just be connected intimately with the Lord, and the best process to connect intimately with the Lord is devotional service. That is how one comes out of three modes of material nature. Because the Supreme Lord, He is completely pure, uncontaminated. Being in touch with Him, we become purified. Anything in touch with the Supreme Lord is considered to be very sacred. That is how we find in Bhagavad Gita. When the Pandavas, they were blowing their conch shell, it was called Divya. Kauravas were blowing, it was not called Divya. Because anything in connection with the Supreme Lord acquires the same qualities as the Supreme Lord. That is the meaning of transcendental. That is the meaning of absolute. So, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, actually this understanding is not there in other sampradayas practically. This is a very special understanding which Lord Chaitanya has given, like this verse. It is so important. From this verse, if we apply in our practical life, we can see that anything connected with the Supreme Lord is transcendental. That is why Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, it is connected, it is the word of the Supreme Lord, it is transcendental. Isn't it? The temple of the Lord, just like we were reading, Prabhupada says, to live in forest is to live in goodness, to live in city is to live in passion, to live in brothel is to live in ignorance, but to live in temple is to live in Vaikuntha, transcendental, beyond the three modes of material nature. Because here, everything is connected to the Supreme Lord. So our activities, our whatever we are doing, if we dovetail that as per the instructions of the spiritual master, then actually nothing is material. Our talents, one may have, somebody may be singer, somebody may speak, somebody may write, somebody may, different kinds of things we may have. All these are material. But the moment we utilize all of them in the service of the Lord, they become transcendental. The same activities, it becomes transcendental. So this is a special gift of Lord Chaitanya that we understand, isn't it? That's how we find when our devotees, they travel to Vrindavan, they touch their head to the land, because that land is not ordinary. That land is touched by the lotus feet of the Lord. Ganga is not ordinary water. Why it is not ordinary water? Because it is touched by the lotus feet of the Lord. Isn't it? So similarly, Prabhupada says that even in the foreign countries, even though there may not be river Ganga, but if the water is offered to the Lord and utilized, that also becomes Charnamrit. Isn't it? So any water, because finally He is the source of everything. Even though river Ganga is directly touched by the Lord, right in the beginning it is emanating from the spiritual world and coming here. But even ordinary water, that also if we utilize in the service of the Lord, in the form of deity, where He accepts that service. River Ganga, whether it touches the deity or not touches the deity, it is still transcendental. But ordinary water is not transcendental. That ordinary water, when we bathe the Lord, it becomes transcendental. Ordinary food, when we offer it to the Lord, it becomes transcendental. So this is the understanding. That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Aradhya Vrajesh Tanaya Tad Dhamam Vrindavanam. Just like the Supreme Lord, He is worshipable. Anything connected with the Supreme Lord is also worshipable. And that is how the vision of a pure devotee is completely different from a vision of a neophyte. Neophyte, because he is not transcendentally connected to the Supreme Lord. He has not acquired the vision of the Supreme Lord. The pure devotee, being connected intimately with the Lord, just like here it is said, Bhavaya, Mad Bhavaya, he attains the same perception, same vision as the Supreme Lord. So, when a pure devotee sees, he does not see matter. Behind the matter, he sees the source of that matter, the Supreme Lord. And that is because of pure devotional service. That is His energy, Krishna is saying. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says. So, when we are seeing, we see it separated from the Supreme Lord. Isn't it? But when a pure devotee is seeing, he does not see. Na dekhi tara murti. He does not see the physical form. Isn't it? He sees the Supreme Lord because it is His energy. So, that is the meaning of understanding what is pure devotional service. So, only by practicing pure devotional service, one can attain that qualitative oneness with the Supreme Lord. So this very, very beautiful last paragraph, Prabhupada explains this very nicely. Without separate endeavor, devotee attains that ekatva. But ekatva we have to understand in a different way. Qualitative oneness with the Supreme Lord. Same qualities as the Supreme Lord. Not that I merge my individuality with the Supreme Lord and I become Supreme Lord. It is not like that. So this is very nicely Prabhupada is saying. It is the misconception of impersonalist that one can worship any imaginary form of the Lord or Brahman and at the end merge in Brahman effulgence. So this is their misunderstanding. Any form you can worship, some Surya Dev, you can worship Indra, you can worship. Any of them you worship, you can still merge in that Supreme Brahman. So first of all, devotees, even though they understand that yes, at certain level the Supreme Lord allows ekatva, which is called kevalya, merging in effulgence of the Supreme Lord, He allows. That is also one kind of mukti. But that is attained even by the enemy of the Lord. What is so great about that? And that is not a permanent situation. This one has to understand, this ekatva mukti is not a permanent situation. It is in the middle. It is in the middle. So, it is just like we are called tatastha, we are in the middle. So, either you can be under Maya or you can be under Yoga Maya. Either of these two. So, for some time, the living entity may come out of this Maya, and until and unless it takes shelter of Yoga Maya by devotional service, there is every chance that the living entity falls down. So many pure devotees, we find, they were Brahman realized, they took advantage of that Brahman realization. They did not fall down. Shukdev Goswami, he was completely liberated, no attraction to the material world. Immediately after being born, he just went out, no attraction at all. You see. But because of the mercy of his father, Vedavyasa, he heard Srimad Bhagavatam and he became fixed in devotional service. Similarly, we find 4 Kumaras, transcendentally liberated, Brahman realized, their consciousness is already merged in Brahman, but still we find somehow or other by the mercy of the Lord they were attracted to Vaikuntha and they became great devotees of the Lord. So that stage of liberation is actually a stage from where one can attain pure devotional service if one is fortunate. But somehow or other, if one is unfortunate, as it is said in the Vedic literatures, that one becomes hard-hearted, very difficult, after practicing impersonalism for life after life, for many millions of life, it is very difficult to get attracted to the Supreme Lord. One becomes hard-hearted. So, this is just a stage from where one can actually attain to pure devotion. Mad bhakti labate param. That stage is not the end, final stage. So that has to be understood. So Prabhupada is saying this. Of course, to merge into the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord is also liberation, as explained in previous. Ekatva is also liberation, but that sort of liberation is never accepted by the devotee. For qualitative oneness is immediately attained as soon as one is situated in devotional service. But he attains another type of ekatva, not this kind of ekatva. As soon as one practices devotional service, immediately he attains ekatva. For a devotee, that qualitative equality, which is the result of impersonal liberation, is already attained. He does not have to try for it separately. It is clearly stated here, simply by pure devotional service, one becomes qualitatively as good as the Lord Himself. So we'll stop with this. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.